Howdy folks, I'm Tyler Henderson. Appreciate you joining us here for East Texas in Focus. Let's get started, shall we? Tonight we are focusing on storm seasons. We're in one right now, but we might be soon. Earlier in the month for January, we felt those below freezing temperatures. At least that I dreaded, that heavy rain and sleet. And our meteorologists, they worked long hours. They've seen some pretty unusual weather patterns of severe weather for sure. And that's why we're bringing in meteorologist Andrew Samet. Andrew, how's it going?
It's going well. I've got my clicker with me, even though I don't need it at all, but I just feel like I have to have it just because it's my thing.
Right. Wait, we work together every morning. Mm-hmm. It's got to be your thing, right?
Yeah.
We need to start out with the biggest weather event that we saw in January anyway. It's that big freeze, right? Mm-hmm. That freeze. Are we going to have another one? I mean, because if you're like me, and I know a lot of people at home are like me, we just don't like the cold weather, period. And when it gets that icy, man, it becomes trouble.
Yeah, that freeze, it wasn't as bad as the February 2021 one, but, some spots lasted over 80 hours below freezing. So it was really cold, and as you can see there, it created that icy mess on the road. So we all hope that we don't see anything like that. We hope that every winter doesn't have, that kind of weather. I think most people are okay with the cold, but maybe not that cold, what we saw last time. But I think going forward, we're definitely going to be off to a warmer start to February, but it does look like the back half of the month is at least trending with below average temperatures. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be freezing cold. Average highs in February are in the 60s at that point, so below average means could be just highs in the 50s. So we're still kind of far out, but I think we'll see at least one more morning with widespread 20s. I don't think we'll get as cold as what we saw in January. That doesn't happen very often, so having it happen twice in a year is unlikely. Of course, never say never. We're in a colder weather pattern by the end of February, and all it takes is one cold snap to create a deep freeze like that. So it's something we'll keep an eye on, but right now, there's no indications that we'll see anything nearly as cold as what we saw in January.
And that was the coldest temperatures that East Texas has seen in close to a year and a half, wasn't it? I mean, it was December 22 that we got that cold in the Piney Woods, right?
Yeah, it was comparable to that December 2022. That happened right before Christmas, actually. And then the rest of the winter was actually really warm. We saw highs up to 86 that February of 2023. And probably won't see that kind of warmth this February coming up, but we'll definitely wait and see. But yeah, last year, 2023, the coldest temperature in Tyler was only 28 degrees, and we dropped down to about 10 in December 2022, and dropped down to about 13 with that January freeze. So definitely got a lot colder, and So.
Good night. Well, it's like the ice came in. It wasn't really any way to enjoy it. If it had some nice thick snow, people could go out inside and enjoy it. If you're like me, I was sliding all over the place on the road, getting in my driveway. It was all kinds of bad. Luckily, Tech Stock crews out there really doing their job and working all hours of the night to help us out there. What was crazy to me was the week following, right? Now that we went from ice and sleet and cold and gross to not as cold, but rainy and lots of it. And for what it's worth, after 2023 and that bad drought that we had, we needed some drought busting rain, and it came quick.
Yeah, over a relatively short period of time too. The month started out warm and kind of dry, and then we had the freeze. But after that, we had all that rain. Angelina County Airport over in Lufkin picked up over a foot of rain for the month of January, the most since last summer. I think it was September. We picked up over 11 inches of rain there at the Angelina County Airport, and we really needed a lot of that rain. Maybe not all of it at once, like we saw. We did see a lot of flooding with that event, but we certainly needed the rain. It's really important this time of the year, especially to build up as much rainfall as possible. The grounds are wet enough and the rivers have enough water and things like that, and the lakes, because we're inevitably going to dry out in the summertime.
Right.
That's July and August are just drier months in general, but if we see anything like what we saw last summer, it'll be good to have as much rain as possible. So I do think that was great news to have with that rainfall, but it does look like we will probably end up with a wetter than average February. We probably won't see an event like that again, because again, 3 days in a row of like over 2-3 inches of rain every single day is pretty rare, but we're definitely trending towards a wetter February and slightly wetter spring as well.
Yeah, put us in a good spot though, which is really nice. Looking at some of the numbers that we've talked about in the mornings, I mean, we went from being way below the drought bucket last year to we are sitting pretty heading into the second month of the year.
Yeah, and this is what typically happens during the El Nino weather pattern that we are in. We typically see our winters tend to be more wet and on the cooler side of things, and you can see that demonstration of what the El Nino is there. And it's basically one part of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Peru is warmer than average, and that can take effects of the weather pattern across the entire globe. Even though it's just one area where the water is warmer than average, it sets up a more active jet stream here in the south, and so we tend to have wetter winters when we do have an El Nino weather pattern like we did.
Right, and for myself, growing up in a ranching farming community, being around that community, El Nino spells pretty good for farmers and ranchers across the Lone Star State. So for those of us that aren't as super familiar with it, what is it? Can you break it down for me? Because I mean, it's a good thing. And then how long do these things last?
Yeah, so the Pacific Ocean, especially off the coast of Peru, always goes through a lot of temperature changes. When it's cooler than average, it's called La Nina. When it's average, we just don't have anything. And then when it's above average, it's El Nino. And again, it does affect the overall wind pattern. So temperature has a huge effect on how wind blows throughout the entire atmosphere. And again, even though it's a small area of the world that has those warm above average rainfall, or above average sea surface temperatures rather, again, we just get that active jet stream. And when you have an active jet stream, that means the winds are strong over our area, and that's able to help transport those storm systems into our neck of the woods. And it does look like it will last the El Nino through at least the rest of this winter. It will probably start to calm down by the late spring and become more of a neutral kind of thing there, probably by April or May. So we'll get back into just your more typical weather pattern here in East Texas after that. But until then, we'll hope for as much rain as possible like we just talked about.
Sure, and we've talked about this before. If you had freezing cold, the ice, the sleet, then you had the extreme flooding, and then 70-degree weather like we saw in the back half of January heading into February, on your weather bingo card, you are sitting pretty heading into the rest of 2024. Because to me, at least in my lifetime, I don't remember having a 1 month. It was, we came into it after Christmas feeling pretty mild. It's still it felt a little below average, I think. And then bam, freeze, bam, rain, bam. Felt like above average temperatures. I don't know how common that is, but I mean, we've seen just about everything in a month span. I mean, who needs seasons, right? January's got it covered.
Yeah, well, winter is notorious here in East Texas for being very topsy-turvy. And it just comes with the nature of being down here. When we talk about average highs during this time of the year, it's in the upper 50s and low 60s. But really, the average doesn't mean that much right now, because usually we're either on either side of the extreme. Either we're in the 70s or we're in the 30s, but it all averages out to about 60 degrees or the upper 50s in the winter. But, we're rarely in the upper 50s. It's either one extreme or the other, it seems.
Right. That seems like Texas, right? Spin a wheel, you're going to get whatever you get, right?
Yep.
Well, hey, that's a pretty good start, right? When we return with East Texas in Focus, Andrew's got more for us. We'll be right back after a quick break. Welcome back in. We are focusing on storm seasons, the wind, the rain, freezing temperatures. We've seen just about everything in East Texas's first month or so of 2024 that's caused damage in their path. And after every round of bad weather, people are left without power. On top of that, East Texas is left blind due to the dead zone on our radars. The key is always staying prepared, staying aware, staying weather aware is what we like to say. So let's get right back into it, Andrew. Obviously, we've seen just about everything, so as we head into spring, that heads into summer, severe weather season's about to hit its peak. What are some safety tips for people going through all these extreme weather changes for severe weather season?
Yeah, last spring we kind of lucked out. There weren't that many tornadoes here in East Texas. We had a very active June though, which caused a lot of wind damage across the area. So it just goes to show how important it is to be safe, especially during this time of the year. Again, in the spring, we're all fair game to see some tornadoes. So preparation for it is key. Now, there's no reason to be afraid when severe weather happens. Of course, it is dangerous, but as long as you're prepared and you know exactly what to do, you will stay safe in severe weather. I always like to say this. I think I saw a statistic once that you're more likely to get killed from a falling coconut than a tornado. So don't be scared of severe weather, just be prepared. And how you do that, being prepared, that is having multiple ways of receiving weather alerts. And we say multiple ways because one way it's technology, one way can fail sometimes. It's always important to have a backup there. So again, having multiple ways of receiving weather alerts, like the East Texas Storm Team app, which is free to your phone. And then we also have the NOAA Weather Radio, which is also very helpful for severe weather. It's also, of course, just paying attention to the forecast as it goes along. When we say there's going to be severe weather, it doesn't mean it's a guarantee that you will exactly see severe weather, but that there's just a chance for severe weather. The ingredients are there, so once you know the ingredients are there, it's important to be prepared well ahead of time. Another thing you can do when it comes to tornadoes, which is obviously the most dangerous aspect of severe weather here in East Texas, again, it's important to know where your tornado safe place is, and that's going to be the lowest floor, interior room of a sturdy structure. Mobile homes, not safe at all. Recommendation, if you're under a tornado watch, again, tornado watch is just when tornadoes are possible. That's when you get into a sturdier structure like a hotel, gas station, whatever. And then when that tornado warning is issued, that's when you need to be in your tornado safe place, because that means the tornado threat is imminent. And another really important thing is make sure everybody in your household knows where your tornado safe place is ahead of time. You don't want to get a tornado warning and to be scrambling, not sure, where to go exactly. So preparation is key. As long as you are prepared, as long as you know what's going to come and you have those multiple ways of receiving weather alerts, you're going to be fine. Right.
Good thing for us, there's no coconuts around here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
There you go.
No, we don't have to worry about no falling coconuts, so I like my chances there. And you're right. You better be safe than sorry, right? I mean, with anything. And it's really... It's so important, especially with, for me, having a young daughter, when I'm not always here, if I've got to be out, we get up way early in the morning before they wake up. If something were to happen while we were at work, they've got to know where to go to keep our family safe. So I appreciate that. Now, we talked about that El Nino pattern that we're very much looking forward to. Now, with that, is that going to have any kind of impact on severe weather season?
Yeah, so El Nino pattern does call for increased precipitation chances generally here in the south. Now, the good news is here, the El Nino pattern is going to wind down a little bit towards the spring, so we may not get that as much above average precipitation. But if you have above average precipitation, you're just going to have more chances for severe weather just because there's more chance of rain. And typically, it's warm enough when the rain comes in during the spring to allow for that severe weather. So El Nino doesn't really have a huge impact on the severe weather season, but again, when we're wetter than average, pretty much any storm system during that time of the year, March, April, May, and even June in some cases, when you have those ingredients there and there's also a chance of rain, you almost guarantee there's at least a chance of some severe weather. It may not be a significant severe weather event because El Nino also tends to be a little bit cooler than average. You need generally warmer temperatures for more severe weather. So again, it doesn't really have a huge effect on severe weather, but we just know that there is an increased chance for rain. And so anytime there's at least a chance to rain during the spring, you can almost guarantee there's at least a chance of an isolated severe thunderstorm. So really, in terms of preparations, it shouldn't really change that much. Still always have those multiple ways of receiving weather alerts and know where your tornado safety place is.
Yeah, we've gotten really, I don't want to say lucky, right? But we've been very fortunate not to have really any at all severe weather across East Texas to start 2024. We've had some alerts pop up here and there, but nothing too crazy to start 2024. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, and that owes to the fact that we have been below average temperature-wise for January. That certainly, I know a lot of people don't like the cold, but when it is cold outside, severe weather becomes highly unlikely. So, the cold's not always a bad thing. We maybe don't want it to be as cold as it was in January, but we'll definitely take a cooler than average spring because that would limit the severe weather threat. After
a year where we were above average almost all year, and everybody remembers last summer. That was one of the hottest summers on record, and God, it lasted, it seemed like forever and ever. It just wouldn't end. But are we expecting something similar this year, knowing that a little bit below average to start the year? Summer's a little further away, but what does a little further down the line look like for us?
Yeah, so we've been following a consistent pattern here in the last decade or so of warmer than average summers. And unfortunately, the early indications are right now that we are going to be above average yet again for the summer. There's no real major weather pattern change that is going to affect that. It's just that we've been just trending warmer with our summers to begin with. And we've also been trending drier as well with our summers. Now, nothing has been nearly as bad as that 2011 drought was, but certainly we are susceptible to drought. And when we do have drought, that actually makes things hotter because when the ground is actually has less moisture to work with, it's able to heat up faster. So when you have a drought, and this was what happened last summer, why it was one of the reasons why it was so hot was because not only was it just going to be hot anyway because of big ridges of high pressure over our area, but we also had the drought, and so the ground's able to warm up pretty quickly when it's not as moist. It does limit the humidity a little bit, but what really difference does it make when it feels like it's 115 versus
Right.
120 at that point?
Right.
But yeah, so far it looks like the summer will probably trend a little bit warmer and probably drier than average once again. So I do think it will be probably another hot summer. Probably not as hot as what we saw last summer. I mean, last summer was historic heat. We hit an all-time record high in Lufkin with records going all the way back to the early 1900s.
Sure.
And so I don't think we'll see that kind of record high again. It's really hard to break records, which is why they're records. But I do think we'll see many more 100-degree days heading into the summer for sure.
That's Texas for you, right? That is Texas for you. I tell you what, it's good stuff. When we return, we're going to get y'all's thoughts. They're going to be heard as we open up the In Focus inbox after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back in, y'all. It's that time of the show which we're going to hear from y'all, our viewers, from our In Focus inbox. This one's sent in by Deborah Dukes saying, Andrew, how did you get started in meteorology? And so, I mean, because we've talked about this a little bit. There's all kinds of ways people get into all their passions one way or another. So how did you get interested in it, and what made you want to start in it?
All right, so I was 8 years old when I got interested in weather. I just started watching the Weather Channel. I don't know how I stumbled upon the weather. I wish I could go back in time and figure out how I actually stumbled upon the Weather Channel in the first place. It's not like my parents watched it or anything like that. But when I was 8 years old, I was watching them do coverage of hurricanes and things like that. It was Hurricane Isabel, which was back in 2003. Probably not familiar here with East Texas. It was more of an East Coast thing, North Carolina area. But it really got me fascinated with hurricanes at first. And from there, kind of just sprung into everything else. And then lightning. I really like filming lightning. Now, don't try that at home. Do not go out and film lightning. It's very dangerous. I take into account that danger, I guess, and still do it anyway. But again, don't keep it to the professionals, I guess, with that. But I just love all things weather. I just love the sky. I mean, blue's my favorite color because it's the color of the sky, and that goes to why I like the weather so much.
Yeah, risk takers, right? Y'all storm chasers, man. Y'all are
I have not chased a tornado. I can
different
say that
breed
I have
of
not
people.
chased a tornado. It's on my bucket list, though. Would be pretty cool. But I'm one of those people that would stay as far away from the tornado as possible. Like, just get right into the view where you can see it from many miles down the road. But people, extreme storm chasers, get right into it.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. If you see a tornado, you want to drive away from it.
Watching a storm is beautiful. I'll watch it from my front porch and on my patio, where I can see it in the distance. But hey, look, storm chasers, different breed. And as always, we're going to invite you back for more feedback to focus on if you want your voice to be heard next week. Send us an email, infocus@ketk.com. You might see your comments on the big show. We'll be right back. Stick with us. Welcome back in, y'all. Andrew, before we head out, you got any final remarks before we leave?
Yeah, as we go into severe weather season, really important, have multiple, the keyword multiple, ways of receiving weather alerts. It will save your life.
A pretty sound piece of advice there. Andrew, thank you. Next week, we're going to zero in on more issues. It's coming Saturday on East Texas in Focus. Have a great night, everybody. God bless.